All right, 8th grade Grizzlies, this is Miss Brown again, and we're going to continue with the review for your cells test. This part is going to go over inherited traits, chromosomes, DNA, and the Punnett squares, okay? All right, so first thing I want to start off with, and you will probably want a separate sheet of paper to jot these notes down on, okay? All right, so we started talking about genes, chromosomes, DNA. So the main thing I want to point out here is that genes are the smallest. Genes make up DNA, which is deoxyribonucleic acid. Genes are on chromosomes. And chromosomes are in the nucleus of a cell. So if you have your nucleus, these would be the chromosomes. They're usually represented by little X's. Okay? So chromosomes are in the nucleus. I'm just pointing that out because I think there's a question on your test that asks that. Okay, then we moved on to talk about inherited traits. Okay, inherited traits are traits that are passed from parent to offspring. Okay, so examples are eye color, hair color, and the one most of my 8th graders like to tease me about, height. Okay. Okay, so let's go into talking about, we're going to talk about the genes and the different types of traits. Okay. So we talked about genotype. Okay, this is the genetic code or the letters. Okay, so like, okay. Then we talked about phenotype. Okay, this is physical. So this is what it looks like. So it's what you see. Okay, then we talked about dominant traits. This is the trait that is seen. So blonde hair, blue eyes, green eyes, that's the trait that's seen. That's what you see. Okay? And then the recessive trait, oops. This is the trait that is hidden. Unless you have two lowercase letters, so like this. So if an organism has the two alleles for the recessive trait, then that is seen. Okay, now I'll get into this in a little bit. Okay. All right, continuing on with a little bit of vocabulary, more vocabulary before we move into the Punnett squares. Okay, we talked about homozygous. Homo means same. Okay, so this would be an example of homozygous. They are the same, 2 capitals or 2 lowercase. Then we have heterozygous. Hetero means different. So this would be heterozygous. Okay. And then we talked about homozygous dominant. So dominant trait is the trait that is seen. So homozygous dominant would be 2 capital letters, because it's a dominant trait because it's capital, and then it's 2 capitals makes it homozygous. Then we also have heterozygous dominant. Okay, so it's still a dominant trait because you have the capital letters, but it's heterozygous because you have a big A and a little a, big T, little t. Okay. All right. And then we also had homozygous recessive. Okay, that's when you have your 2 lowercase letters, and that's when a recessive trait would be seen, is if an organism has this. So for example, if we use H for height, little h would be somebody that's short. So those are the genes that Miss Brown got. Just a little funny there for you. Okay, moving on. Last definition I did not include was allele. And this is different forms of a gene. Okay. All right, then we went into Punnett squares. So this little guy here. Okay, so a Punnett square is just basically a diagram that shows you the possible genotypes and phenotypes of the offspring. Okay, so remember, genotype is the genes or the letters or the genetic code, and phenotype is what you see. Okay, so each box in a Punnett square represents a 25% probability of the offspring having that trait. Hint, hint, this is a question straight off of your test. So each box is 25% chance. Okay, so think of this box as $1, and think of the Punnett square itself as $1, and each box is a quarter, because 4 quarters make $1. Okay, so if you can think of it like that, that might help you. All right, so let's do a little bit of practice, and then we'll be done. All right, so let's say we have capital B is dominant for brown fur, and little b is recessive for white fur. Okay, so let's say that mom is homozygous recessive for brown fur. So that means she has white fur. If she's homozygous recessive, she's going to be 2 little b's because she's homozygous recessive, so she has white fur. Okay? So let's say dad is heterozygous dominant. So if dad is heterozygous dominant, this is his genotype because he's hetero dominant. So we need a big B, but he's hetero, so we need a little b. Okay? All right, so then we're going to put this into the Punnett square. It doesn't matter where you put mom or dad. Okay? I'd like to put mom on across the top and then dad along the side. So this is mom. She's little b, and then dad is big B, little b. Now, the offspring gets one trait from each parent, or one gene, I'm sorry, from each parent. Okay? So you bring down the little b's, and then you bring these across. Okay? So if we bring down, each offspring gets a little b for mom. Okay, and then each offspring gets a big B and a little b. Okay? So there is a 50% chance of the offspring having brown fur, and a 50% chance of the offspring having white fur. Why? Because of the 50% chance that the offspring will get this genotype, big B, little b, dominant for brown fur. There's also a 50% chance that the offspring will get 2 little b's, which would be white fur. So in this situation, the recessive trait would be seen if the offspring gets this genotype because it's 2 little b's. Okay? Let's do one more. Okay, so let's say big T is tall and little t is short. Okay. So let's say mom is heterozygous dominant for tall. So if she's heterozygous for tall, she's going to be big T, little t. And let's say dad is also heterozygous dominant. So he's also going to be big T, little t. Okay? So we're going to put this into the Punnett square. So we're going to put mom across the top, big T, little t. Oops. Actually, guys, I'm going to change paper because I don't like the way this is bleeding through. Okay, let's do this on here. So big T is tall, little t is short. So we said that mom was heterozygous dominant. I'm just going to abbreviate. Mom is heterozygous dominant. So she's big T, little t. And we said that dad was also heterozygous dominant. So he's big T, little t. Hetero, 2 different genes, dominant, a capital. All right, let's put this in the Punnett square. Okay, again, I'm going to put mom on top. And I'm going to put dad on the side. Each offspring gets 1 gene from each parent. So, big T, little t. Okay? So you go down, big T, little t. Okay? So the offspring, each offspring got 1 from mom. Okay? And then we go across. So big T, little t. Big T, little t. I'm sorry, no, these are, wait a minute. No, big, oh no, these, wait a minute. Let me back up. Yep, that's right. So big T for mom, okay? And then little t, little t. Okay, I'm gonna rewrite that because I just, okay. All right, so big T, little t, right here. Big T, little t, little t, little t. Okay, that's a little bit better. I had too many lines in here. I didn't want to confuse you or myself. Okay, so now let's look at the genotypes. So the genotypes we have are big T, big T, big T, little t, and little t, little t. So the possible phenotypes, okay? So the big T's, 1, 2, 3. So there's a 75% chance of tall and a 25% chance of short. Okay? So remember, 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. You have a big T, and a big T. So this is 75 and then 25. Okay? So if you see a question on your test like that, that's how you look at it. Okay? And I'm going to go back and do that on this one too. I didn't do it on this one. Okay, so your genotypes for this one, you have big B, and little b, little b. So those are your genotypes. And then we already did the phenotype. 50% chance of brown fur, 50% chance of white fur. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that does it. This is a review for your test. So on behalf of Miss Ludeman, Miss Ford, Mr. Winter, I am Miss Brown, and go through your notes, listen to this video, and you will do well on your test. And go Grizzlies.